All right, y'all. Welcome back to the channel. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this as a podcast. I am trying out some new software. We've had a lot of different technical issues, so um, I'm running with a new recording software called Riverside. So I'm just testing it out before we dive in because of the issues we've been having with StreamYard and the online hacking inside of the server window while we're trying to record, not even going live. So I'm going to test this out in Riverside. I know a lot of people use Riverside, and so that's what we're rolling here. But I wanted to do a video today on the dangers of seed oil. And the reason I bring this up is, we've been carnivore 500 and some days and whatever. And I think the most insidious thing that's been injected into our food system is seed oils. And the reason I'm bringing this up is we recently had an awards banquet at my work. And I was like, hey, man, I'll come, as long as there's something that I can eat. And so, they know I'm carnivore and all this stuff. So we had it catered by a Mexican restaurant, and they were making these Mexican tacos. And I said, hey, I'll take the meat and the cheese. And I just had like two servings of this, and it was good. It tasted good and all this stuff. But the days following me eating, I didn't eat any of their. They had like those churros for dessert with like super processed ice cream and all that stuff. I didn't eat any of that stuff. I didn't deviate from the standard operating procedure. I ate only the meat and cheese, and they grilled it on the Blackstone. But I'm thoroughly convinced that however these meats were prepared, they were prepared in seed oils because the following week, I completely had a huge inflammation flare up, and my neck. What happens with me is my neck and my back all lock up, and they don't move, and it's just a mess. And it's a blessing and a curse because it's a very clear indicator of what's going on, and I'm aware of what's happening and what's going on. And so therefore, if I eliminate that, so I was like, wow, there must have been something in that was not cool with the whole eating of foods and processing of foods and all this good stuff. And I'm thoroughly convinced. And there's a lot of talk about seed oils. And the reason I kind of wanted to break it down um, is because people don't understand how these seed oils are actually made. And there's an enormous amount of propaganda and all these different things. So I wanted to kind of break this down. And I listened to Low Carb Down Under, had a presentation by a Dr. Knobbe. He is an ophthalmologist, and I think his specialty is macular degeneration. And he gave a really good presentation and a breakdown. So I wanted to kind of try to summarize that. And I'm taking this summary from Hunter hunterandgathererfoods.com. This is from their blog, but basically they're breaking down the the history and the process. What I wanted to point out the most is the process, the way these things are processed. They have to be exclusively toxic because it is utterly disgusting and repulsive and insane the way that they process these seed oils and then claim that they're edible. And this is the crux of the deconstruction of our post truth, postmodern food system. And just like many things have been corrupted and history is being rewritten, our food is literally being deconstructed and then reconstructed in the image of the technocracy or whatever. But there's an executive summary that I'll kind of breeze through. And then I'll get into how they're processing these things and why your body exclusively rejects these seed oils, and the fact that if you continue to eat them even in trace amounts, it is going to do damage to your body, and it's going to destroy society as we know it, and that's not being hyperbolic. A quarter of the people in the UK have at least one diagnosed chronic illness, and what this doctor pointed out is that anecdotally, you can point to all of these cardiac disease, uh, cholesterol, heart attacks, and strokes, and dementia. Anecdotally, you can plot these things on a graph, and all of these things ramped up with intensity exclusively with the introduction of seed oils and now the pervasiveness of seed oils. Could dietary fats be playing a role? Certain essential fats must be included in our diets. Linoleic acid and omega-6 polyunsaturated fat is an essential oil in tiny amounts. With the advent of the oil industry circa 1911, I find the dates fascinating because at the exact same time, our monetary system was being hijacked by the banking cartel. Our food system was being hijacked by the British East India Company. And so, if you're familiar with Tragedy and Hope and the Belt and Road Initiative and all these things, it's so wild how all of these things tie together. With the advent of the oil industry circa 1911, our exposure to omega 6 polyunsaturated fats, including linoleic acid, multiplied exponentially. In 1912, heralded the first record heart attack. It quickly became the world's leading cause of death and remains there today. Seed oils, aka vegetable oils, make up 60% of the world's most inefficient crops. Uh, Inadvertently, or maybe directly, this is also the argument for why monocropping is a necessity and why all this soy and corn are grown. And most of this soy goes into animal feed and these oils, and then most of this corn goes into our gasoline fuel system. It's so insane. The rabbit hole is deep on this. They provide almost no nutrients at all, but lots of calories. And this is another thing, this whole calorie thing and this calorie myth is just, it's a total, and a lot of people in the prepper community, they always talk about calories, 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 but there are inordinate amounts of dead calories that we consume. And just because your caloric intake is high does not mean that you will exist. But if you're existing, if you're just alive, even though you feel like you're dead and you can't do anything, what's the point, right? Despite a ban, they do still contain small amounts of poisonous trans fats. During processing and at home, they begin to oxidize, creating reactive chemicals that cause oxidative stress and trigger inflammation. Many restaurant cooking oils are highly toxic. Most people today still believe omega 6 polyunsaturated fats are the quote unquote healthy choice. They overconsume them, pushing their levels of linoleic acid beyond normal. This excess creates oxidative stress at a cellular level, triggering inflammation and errant immune responses. Nutrients that defend against these pressures are used up quickly, leaving people open to disease, including cardiovascular and metabolic disease. And we know that the predominant disease today among people that are killing people is metabolic. It's exclusively metabolic. Two major diseases of civilization. The ratio of anti inflammatory omega 3 to omega 6 drops lower than ever before in history. This poor 3 to 6 ratio also causes inflammation. Some landmark pieces of research that seem to defend these oils as a healthier choice over saturated fats, particularly from animals, turned out to be adulterated by their researchers. The actual results showed a worsening effect of omega 6 polyunsaturated fats on cardiovascular disease and other disease markers. The list of diseases associated with oxidized seed oils and disproportionately high levels of omega 6 to 3 in the body is staggering. Let the scientists battle it out. In the meantime, you have nothing to lose by reducing the worst offenders, including restaurant fried foods and ultra processed junk foods. Chronic and non communicable diseases are increasing everywhere modernity comes to call. The Industrial Revolution changed food processing forever. Oils could be extracted from plants on an industrial scale. Advanced nations began consuming vegetable oils high in omega 6 polyunsaturated fats, linoleic acid, which is an essential fat in tiny quantities, has now become a much larger part of our diet than it ever should have. Omega 6 oils are easily oxidized, especially when heated, which will come to play when we talk about the processing. The omega 6 oil has de-established our omega 6 to omega 3 fat ratio. Cells are more likely to become damaged due to oxidation, creating oxidative stress and chronic inflammation, two symptoms that characterize many chronic diseases, including but not limited to cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia, and metabolic diseases, including obesity and diabetes type 2. You have nothing to lose by reducing your exposure to these oils. What's even more wild to me is you will see a trend on social media where people are trying to debunk these seed oils and they're trying to pretend that they're actually good for you. And if you look at the process in which they're processed, it is absolutely scientifically impossible for them to be good for you. Every year, the world takes another step into a realm of technological brilliance. Time consuming inconveniences are handed over to computer programs, artificial intelligence, and maybe tomorrow to robots. Who knows what wonders the day after tomorrow will herald? But there is one thing we humans can't hand over, and that is the staggering array of chronic diseases from which so many of us suffer. Yeah, and also, the modern day technocrats, they want to use their Neuralink and all these different technocratic amalgamations of technology to repair and bring quality of life. Meanwhile, people are drinking ultra toxic seed oils. They're drinking poison, and I mean, they're just coming out now and trying to take fluoride out of the water and all of this industrialization deconstruction, right? And oh, you need iodized salt. You need iodine in your table salt. It's a serious rabbit hole, and it's a very this could be 3 hours long if I wanted it to be, but. And the more technologically advanced we become, the more chronic disease seems to gather pace. And that's why we always say observe the masses and do the opposite. And one of the things that we've done in our life is we want to design and live a more a slower pace lifestyle, and we want to design and live an agrarian, a different type of lifestyle that can't be recreated in a concrete jungle or in a city and or in a high rise. And if you're stuck in one of them environments, I understand. And I don't have a solution for that. There is no amount of like virtual reality or augmented reality that's going to be able to deliver you from that. Um, and we do need to be able to just touch dirt and work with God's creation and do all these different things that we were designed to do. And there's nothing that's going to substitute for that. And there's no amount of technology or blue light or screens or anything that's going to replace that. And what we find is our long term exposure to all these things is very detrimental to our health and very much negatively impacts us and harms us and damages us and creates cancer and all these different things. Life expectancy is sliding backwards. In the UK, 24.4% of us have at least one underlying chronic condition. No age group is exempt. 8.3% of our children, 66% of those over 70, and 19% of those between suffer from incessant diseases. And I think the percentages are even higher here in America just because so much of we're that much further down the industrial technocratic slide. Chronically ill people account for half of all GP general practitioner appointments, 64% of outpatient appointments, and over 70% of inpatient. Those people existing in the poorest strata of our societies have a 60% higher prevalence of chronic disease with a 30% increase in severity compared to those in the wealthiest. Our American cousins suffer worse since health surveyors of the U.S. first recorded the state of chronic diseases in 1935. There has been a 700% increase. 60% of Americans deal with at least one long-term condition. Our modern era seems to be characterized by chronic inflammation, the root of so many persistent illnesses. Are you a player in a game over which you have no control, or is there something you can do to remove at least one thing that may be causing this epidemic of inflammation? Like I was previously saying, if you're in a concrete jungle, if you're in a city, right, there is something you can do about not consuming seed oils. So there's hope. We think there is, and you can start taking action by reading this article about industrialized seed oils and their transition from a mere drop within our diet to a wave sweeping ancient fats aside. Fats 101, eating as much protein and as carbohydrates as you like wouldn't prevent you from dying unless you added certain fats. Fats, scientifically called lipids, play an incredible array of different and critical roles within us. All fat-containing foods have varying fractions of the following three lipids. They are saturated fats, monosaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats, which they affectionately refer to as PUFAs. PUFAs are further characterized as omega-3 and omega-6 fats. Saturated fats add rigidity and form to cell membrane walls. Striking a perfect balance, MUFAs add a touch of fluidity, allowing nutrient access and simultaneously permitting waste products and signaling molecules out. PUFAs add more fluidity and signaling properties, passing on electrical and chemical messages that are forever whizzing from place to place, from cell to cell. These characteristics allow PUFAs to perform certain tasks, but make them more susceptible to damage by heat, light, and oxygen. Wow. Heat, light, and oxygen. So we are surrounded by light and oxygen, and this process that's required to make seed fats, quote unquote, edible requires an intense amount of heat. The brain is a dense sort of these fluid fats. With the water removed, the brain is 60% fat, half of which are PUFAs as omega-3, DHA, and omega-6 arachidonic acid. Essential fats. Certain fats are classified as essential. In a biological sense, essential means something that must be obtained from the diet because it cannot be synthesized inside the body. And the more we hear about these vegans dying and just being chronically ill, we have vegan friends that are just chronically ill and they're in and out of the hospital and they have blood issues and they have bone issues and and they bought all this low Melinda propaganda and all this Seventh Day Adventist stuff and this revisionist history and Kellogg and all these different things, and they are just perpetually ill and in out of the hospital because they're not obtaining these essential fats that are required to sustain life. Humans can make SFAs and MUFA from carbohydrates, so they are non essential fats. Different types of SFAs and MUFAs are also found in abundance in our most ancient and nutritious foods, good old fashioned animal products. So, really, it's certain PUFAs that we must get from our diet. EPA, DHA, ALA are all essential omega fatty acids that come under the PUFA umbrella. Linoleic acid is an essential omega 6 fatty acid that has been an important part of our evolution. And what's very interesting, I don't buy into evolutionary biology. I'm not a eugenicist, and I don't partake in any of that. But what is actually the opposite from observation is according to them, as we evolve, we are actually deconstructing and destroying. So if evolution was this natural process of bigger, stronger, faster, then why aren't we evolving our way out of this? And then also, if these toxins were introduced into our diet, why couldn't we just evolve resilient to them and all these different things? So you can see there's a lot of cognitive dissonance tied into this information, and it's all contingent upon your worldview. And I hold a young Earth creationist worldview, and I believe God created everything, and God created animals, and God commanded man to have dominion over the animals, and God gave us animals for food. So, and I won't go down that long discussion, but that's a whole other discussion when it comes to animals and fruits and veggies and all that stuff. But that's for another day. Maybe it'll be a series like Carnivore Confessions or something like that. I don't know. But linoleic acid is an essential omega 6 fatty acid. Important but tiny. Linoleic acid and other PUFAs make up large fractions of modern plant oils, typically made from seeds. These seed oils are ubiquitous, which means we now eat more omega 6, particularly linoleic acid, than at any point in our evolution. This flip happened in just a handful of decades. Familiarize yourself with the chart below, and they have this really interesting chart of the percentage of saturated fats, monosaturated fats, and polysaturated fats. And they're talking about safflower, grapeseed, sunflower, soy, corn, cottonseed, peanut, rice bran, rapeseed, vegetable, and then lard, olive oil, beef drippings, and coconut. So, which seed oils? Firstly, we need to answer what are seed oils. They are industrially processed oil. Seeds popular for the oil include cotton seeds, soybean, corn, sunflower, safflower, canola, which is a modified rapeseed, rice bran, peanut, and grapeseed. These seed oils are high in PUFAs, specifically linoleic acid. We are not talking about fruit oils such as olive, avocado, and coconut. The first two are high in monosaturated fats, and the last is high in saturated fats, respectively. They have been eaten for centuries at least. We're also not talking about linseed or flaxseed oil, which is rich in omega 3 called alpha linoleic acid or ALA. Finally, conjugated linoleic acid or CLA is a healthy omega 6 fat found in small amounts in ruminant animals and their milk. Linoleic acid is central to any debate about seed oils. All right. When technologies combined and created junk, cottonseed was garbage in 1860, fertilizer in 1870, cattle feed in 1880, and table food and many things else in 1890. This is a quote from the book The Rise of the American Cottonseed Oil Industry from 1930. So this book pointed this out in 1930. The world's relationship with seed oil stretches back to the days of human-powered cotton plantations, recent independence from British Dominion, and the catastrophic U.S. North-South divide a mere 200 years ago or so. Evolutionarily speaking, that makes them hot off the press. In 1799, the neonatal U.S. government granted Charles Whiting from Massachusetts a patent to extract oil from cotton seeds. His intention was to replace the sperm whale oil lamps lighting America with a cheaper, convenient oil that involved fewer fatal harpooning accidents. As the decades flicked by, the idea and technologies exchanged hands a few times before a fistful of industrious men began building mills for the purpose of crushing, hulling, and filtering cotton seeds to extract the oil at scale. In 1860, 7 mills across the U.S. were crushing about 50,000 tons of cottonseed. By 1890, 119 mills were turning over 20 million tons every year. Almost none of that was being eaten. What had previously been a waste product that unscrupulous companies were being fined for dumping into rivers has now become an industry in its own right. Cottonseed oil was used for millions of different purposes, including as an industrial lubricant, in paints and coatings for treating and softening textiles, in soaps and cosmetics, as lamp oil and candle making, to name a few. But it wasn't until a few technologies united at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century that things began to change. Firstly, industrial bleaching and deodorizing techniques turned spoiled, stinking oils into fresh-smelling, neutral-tasting products that people could consider eating. Secondly, Leon Moreau, a French engineer, patented an extrusion machine. By applying heat and exerting substantial pressure, the innovative machine demonstrated the ability to extract considerably larger amounts of oil than the traditional method of crushing seeds between two large stones powered by trudging donkeys, obviously of their endless circular oblivious of their endless circular journey. Thirdly, the biggest leap forward was heralded by the soap and candle manufacturers, Procter and Gamble. That sounds familiar. That sounds like a multi-billion-dollar monolithic food corporation. Procter and Gamble, in 1908, the brothers-in-law purchased the rights to the hydrogenation process newly developed in Germany and unwittingly sentenced millions of future people to an early death. Hydrogenation transforms oils into solid fats like lard. Annoyingly runny oils become conveniently spreadable with a longer shelf life. They were also loaded with trans fats. By 1911, all vegetable Crisco was born, and Procter and Gamble had their wonder product. Before the advent of any regulatory bodies, Procter and Gamble were able to proclaim Crisco was a healthier alternative to cooking with animal fats. These claims were based on their wishes and not science. And if you research Procter and Gamble, they were funded by the British East India Company. So the same British East India Company that was the monetary arm of the crown that destabilized China and was all part of the opium trade and deconstructing the Chinese culture with opium dens and all this stuff. These were the ones that funded and financed this whole cottonseed thing, converting it into food. And I use that term loosely. Just 1 year later, Dr. John Herrick detailed the first recorded heart attack. Just 1 year after Crisco was introduced, the first heart attack was recorded. His patient survived after falling as flat as a pancake, which surprised Herrick and a small group of contemporary cardiologists. Seemingly erupting out of nowhere, the next 100 years saw heart attacks becoming increasingly common, eventually surpassing infectious disease to be crowned the world's biggest killer. Cardiovascular disease remains in the top spot to this day, with cancer hot on its heels. Amid growing concerns about the heavy uses of agricultural chemicals in cotton farming, and as the diet heart hypothesis of saturated fat causing heart disease began to take hold of common sense, Procter and Gamble swapped hydrogenated cottonseed oil for hydrogenated canola oil in the 70s. Canola developed the same decade from rapeseed, was lower in the dreaded saturated fat than cottonseed. Deodorizing, extrusion, and hydrogenation made growing seeds for edible oil a big business. Vast areas of land usage swapped from nutrient-dense crops for consumption whole to plants merely for their oil. Exorbitant land usage. Oil crops are an environmental weapon of mass destruction. Today, more oil crops are grown than fruits, vegetables, pulse, tree nuts, and citrus combined. Exponentially more. Like to the tune of, let's see here, 100 million hectares for pulse, fruit, vegetables, tree nuts, citrus, and jute compared to 700 million hectares, making up 3 of the top 5 most inefficient crops. A single kilogram of seed oil from soybean, rapeseed, or sunflower could produce between 30 to 50 kilograms of nutrient-dense vegetables. Oil crops provide just 0.01 of our nutrients, but use between 20 to 30% of our existing agricultural land. The clean winner 4 times over is the land required to grow soybeans. Next comes palm oil, then rapeseed, then sunflower. That's 3 of our top 4 oils that didn't exist in our diets in this refined form prior to about a century ago. These oils add very few nutrients but provide lots of energy, precise the opposite of what most people need. But this poor ratio of nutrients to energy is not the only thing that these modern oils have added to our diets. As they go through industrial processing, they alter in ways that are far from harmless, from which the fallout is only just becoming clear. So now we're going to go through how these seed oils are processed. Now, how they're processed is what makes them unavoidably and exclusively toxic. And for all the proponents that want to try to claim that there's nothing wrong with them, they are obviously not familiar with how they're processed, or they're ignoring it, or they're willingly ignorant, or insert whatever. Damaged goods. The industrial processing of seed oils, including soybean, sunflower, and rapeseed, looks like this. After gathering the seeds, they're cleaned from debris. Okay, no problem there. Seed conditioning. The seeds are heated and or dried. They aren't superheated, so this isn't as much as a problem. It's just drying them. Step 3 is a major problem. Solvent extraction. For seeds with lower oil content, such as soybeans and rapeseed, the seeds are first ground into a fine meal and then mixed with a solvent such as hexane to dissolve the oil. The resulting mixture is separated and the solvent is evaporated to obtain the crude oil. So hexane is evaporated. Now, if you don't understand the evaporation process, it doesn't disappear, right? All of all of what can be aerosolized and go into the air will evaporate, but the solids and the actual chemical compounds that are in the hexane stay within the mixture. So clearly, this part of this extraction process using the solvent is impregnating and embedding incredibly toxic. None of us would drink or eat hexane. Um, it's rather unbelievable. It's kind of hard to imagine. For refining, the extracted oil known as crude oil usually undergoes a refining process to remove impurities and improve clarity, taste, and stability. Step 1, degumming. The crude oil is mixed with water and treated with acid to remove gums and other impurities. The mixture is then separated. So there you go. So they treat it with acid. So I don't know how many of y'all want to eat acid, but in these seed oils, in addition to the hexane derivatives, you're also getting the derivatives from the acids used in this degumming process. Neutralization. In this step, the oil is treated with an alkali solution, usually sodium hydroxide, to remove free fatty acids and other acidic components. So then after they add the acid, then they have to neutralize it. Check this out. Step 3, bleaching. The oil is passed through an absorbent material such as activated carbon or bleaching clay to remove pigments, trace metals, and other impurities. This step improves the oil's color and clarity. So then they bleach, they have to bleach this disgusting stagnant oil. Then, because it reeks so bad, because it's chemical soup, there is deodorization. The oil is heated in a vacuum, like hyperheated. So now we are introducing this oxidative process that makes these oils toxic. Deodorizing the oil is heated in a vacuum to remove any remaining odors or unwanted flavors. Final filtering. Any residual impurities are removed. Packaging and storage. Proper storage conditions, including protecting from air, light, and moisture, heat, and bacteria breakdown. PUFAs are prone to oxidation, a chemical process that makes the fats highly reactive and able to trigger oxidative stress and inflammation inside the body. So the major points of this process that are what make these PUFAs ultra toxic are solvent extraction using things like hexane, then the refining process involving degumming, which uses an acid. Then they have to neutralize it. Then they have to bleach it. Then they have to deodorize it. Now, think of these seed oils and compare them to natural animal fats like bacon grease or lard or tallow. That none of these steps are involved when you create or render this, like when you're rendering tallow, when you're rendering beef fat, you are heating it, right? And then you're skimming it, and the more you want to refine it, you continue to heat it. You're not adding any type of hexane, you're not adding any type of bleaching process. You don't have to deodorize it. As you continue the process of rendering, it continues to purify, and you don't have to have all of these industrial chemical processes introduced. None of these processes that we can do that we couldn't do on a small scale on by ourselves. You know what I mean? Whereas it's very simple, and it might be time consuming to render tallow, but it's a very simple process that does not involve any chemicals. And they want to demonize tallow, and they want to tell you that, soybean and rapeseed, and they had to obviously rename rapeseed because who in the world would drink rapeseed? Like, how is that processed? You know what I mean? But anyway, it's this huge downside that is at the heart of our recommendations to avoid them in their refined modern guises. As mentioned in Fat 101, PUFAs, including seed oils, are damaged by oxygen, light, and heat. They are exposed to these things to a greater or lesser degree whilst they are processed. The damage continues after processing while sitting quietly deceptive on supermarket shelves or used for cooking heat at home or in restaurants, which they are repeatedly heating, like when they're frying your French fries or they're deep frying your seafood, and all of these things that could be naturally deep fried in tallow and other types of natural fats. This repetitive heat process, which is this is why, y'all. This is why you can take all of these seed oils and convert them effortlessly into biodiesel. Now, there is a biodiesel process, but there's also an oil boiler that you can add to a diesel engine where you don't have to process these seed oils and you can just mix them with the diesel and it burns great. And it smells like French fries. I had a buddy with a diesel vehicle with an oil boiler, and he just used these seed oils to supplement his diesel, and it like tripled or quadrupled his gas mileage or his diesel mileage. And that's why these seed oils can be effortlessly converted into biodiesel, because in the larger picture, they are already a chemicalized oil with all these same components of diesel. I don't think any of us would drink diesel or consume 60% of all of our calories from diesel. Processing creates trans fats. After processing and before you heat them at home, seed oils can contain about 3.6 trans fats, which are under the 0.5 grams per 14 gram serving size. This means the product can legally proclaim 0 grams of trans fats. So, despite a ban on industrially processed trans fats, natural trans fats are not the same. By 2023, they will continue to be in your seed oils before you've opened the bottle. That alone is reason enough to leave them on the supermarket shelf. And then, as you continue to heat these things over and over again, these trans fats continue to grow and multiply. Trans fats aren't the only things you have to worry about in industrialized seed oils. Scientists generated aldehydes in soybean oil, America's most popular choice. Aldehydes are a dangerous byproduct of heating, even under completely normal cooking times and temperatures like you would at home. Aldehydes can be causal to both cancer and heart disease, both of which we'll discuss in more detail later. As mentioned, oxidation of seed oils, either in processing, storage, at home usage, or inside our bodies, causes a deterioration of quality, making the fat reactive. But the everyday usage that creates more oxidation than anything else is when seed oils are repeatedly heated. So by cooking with these seed oils, we are actually exponentially increasing the toxicity of these industrial oils. Hour after hour, day in, day out, restaurants all over the world boil and bubble their choice of seed oils in their deep fat fryers. The more often they heat them, the more damaged and reactive they become. Whether or not these oils become oxidized and reactive is no longer debated. UK and US governing bodies do not legislate how often a restaurant should reuse their oils, instead, leaving it up to the restaurant to decide. Obviously, commercial eateries have a vested reason to use their oils right up until they become rancid. Researchers examine the quality of discarded oils and publish their findings in the Food Science and Nutrition Journal. And here's a quote: the majority of discarded oil from fast food restaurants were over degraded, containing hazardous secondary oxidative byproducts. And now, the moral to this story, and this is kind of very convoluted in this new modern mantra of make America healthy again, and you see all these supposed political messiahs that are going to make us healthy again sitting around eating McDonald's, and the solution is, cook your McDonald's French fries in tallow or whatever, which it would be nice to see some type of change or what have you. But if you're eating fast food, one, you are robbing your legacy of any type of financial success or freedom. Okay. You are overspending on incredibly terrible, deconstructive, disgusting, toxic food. And you would do yourself and the world a favor if you would stop eating fast food, and you would feel better. And you would have more money to capitalize and to save, that would benefit not just you, but your future generations. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff is interrelated and overlaps. And what I will do is I'll put a link to this article down below so you can look at all their footnotes. So they footnoted all their facts, and they got some color charts and whatnot that you can visit, where you can watch anecdotally, you can watch how these industrialized seed oils have kind of taken over our food system, and definitely as a major calorie source, and have created all this chronic disease. If you want to go way down the rabbit hole and read Carol Quigley's Tragedy and Hope, and learn about the British East India Company and Cecil Rhodes and the Belt and Road Initiative and all these different things. That's very interesting. And it's also very interesting how all of these usual suspects are tied together between big oil and big ag and big food. And this other big oil is this big seed oil, which is huge. And it's fascinating. And the solution to all of this is to know your farmer and to shake a farmer's hand. And if you are local to the East Texas area, we are starting to offer local meat pickups where you don't have to buy a whole, a half, or a quarter of a cow, but we offer it by the pound. And so if you're interested in that, send us an email at countrytexasboys@gmail.com, or go on over to our website, The Texas Boys, and sign up for our newsletter, because we are doing a pickup this Saturday at 12. So if that's something that you want to take advantage of, send us an email. But I hope this sheds some light on how incredibly toxic and absolutely evil these industrialized seed oils are. They're not fit for human consumption, and the more we actually use them, the more toxic they become, and the more they're injected and introduced into our food system, the sicker we become. And just the small choice of removing that from your diet can have such exponentially positive implications. And it's very easy to do from a choice standpoint. All of these substances are incredibly addictive by design, in addition to the way they add refined sugar to it, almost in a similar way CAFOs feed their concrete lot animals. And you are not, we have not evolved. Because if we had evolved, all that stuff would work. And but it doesn't work, and that's why we are poisoning ourselves. And so I just wanted to give you some food for thought. I'll probably post this as a video and maybe I'll roll it out there on the podcast just to help get this information out. Like, share, subscribe. Whether you're listening to the Fearless podcast or whether you're watching us on social media, share this with your friends and family. Like I said, the article will be linked below with the footnotes to the papers and to the data. So I just want to create some more awareness about this. Love and appreciate y'all. Also, y'all, if you're still listening, our new coffee line is out and available, and we can actually ship it to you. And it is locally roasted, and it's a much more simpler baseline. It's awesome. So I encourage y'all to go over there and check it out to thetexasboys.com. And we will see y'all. Have a great day.